Welcome, seeker of the depths. There is a moment in the life of every individual who embarks on the path of self-knowledge, that path we often call awakening, where a dangerous illusion arises. It is a subtle trap, hidden within the very light we have found. When our eyes open to the reality of the unconscious, when we begin to understand the energetic threads that weave the tapestry of existence, we feel a sudden surge of power. We see the mistakes of others clearly. We see where our loved ones, our colleagues, or society are stumbling. And in that moment of clarity, a temptation is born, the desire to intervene. But today, I must speak to you about a boundary that must not be crossed. I want to speak to you about a dark law that operates in the shadows of spiritual growth. It is a law that, if violated, brings about consequences far more severe for the awakened than for the one who sleeps in ignorance. Have you ever wondered why, sometimes, when you try hardest to help someone, when you push them to change, when you use your energy to steer their life, everything collapses? Why does that help turn into conflict, exhaustion, or a sudden misfortune in your own life? This is not a coincidence. This is the mechanism of the cosmos correcting an imbalance. This is the law of karma responding to a violation of sovereignty. To understand this, we must first strip the word karma of its superstitious connotations. In the light of depth psychology and universal spirituality, karma is not a vengeful deity sitting on a cloud, keeping a tally of your sins to punish you. No, karma is simply and terrifyingly physics. It is the law of the pendulum. It is the principle that every displacement of energy requires a compensation. Jung might call it the principle of enantiodromio, the tendency of things to turn into their opposites when pushed to the extreme. For the unconscious person, the one who walks through life reacting blindly to their impulses, the return of karma is often slow, a dull ache of repetitive patterns. But for you, the awakened, for you who claim to understand the nature of energy and the psyche, the rules are different. The reaction is immediate. The stakes are higher. Why? Because you know better. And consciousness comes with a terrible price: responsibility. Let us visualize this with a new image. Imagine you are a gardener. You have spent years studying the soil, the seasons, and the cycles of life. You understand that a seed needs darkness to germinate and light to bloom. Now, you see a rose bush in your garden. It is struggling, its buds are tight, refusing to open. You know that if they opened, they would be beautiful. You know that inside that tightness lies a magnificent color. The dark law we are discussing today is the impulse to reach out with your hands and physically pry those petals open. It seems like an act of love, does it not? You want the flower to realize its potential. You want to save it from its own delay. But what happens if you force a flower open before its time? You destroy it. The petals tear, the structure collapses. The flower dies, not because it couldn't bloom, but because you violated its internal rhythm. You imposed your timeline upon its nature. This is exactly what happens when an awakened person interferes with the free will of another. The dark law states that no being has the authority to alter the destiny or the decisions of another soul, regardless of how superior or spiritual their intentions may be. The moment you manipulate, the moment you use your energetic influence or your psychological insight to force someone to choose what you think is right, you are acting out of the shadow. You are no longer a guide. You have become a tyrant in the guise of a savior. Carl Jung spoke extensively about the dangers of the mana personality or psychic inflation. This occurs when an individual assimilates contents from the collective unconscious great truths, spiritual powers, and the ego swells up, believing it possesses these powers personally. The ego begins to think, I am the one who knows. I am the one who heals. I am the one who saves. This is the ultimate trap for the awakened. When you believe you know what is best for your partner, your child, or your friend, and you maneuver behind the scenes, emotionally blackmailing them, energetically pushing them, or judging their path as wrong, you are violating the sacred law of free will. And the universe does not take this lightly. If you are awake, you are effectively a conduit for higher voltage. If a person holding an AA battery touches the wrong wire, little happens. But if you, holding the voltage of a lightning bolt, touch the wrong wire, if you misuse your influence, the shock is catastrophic. The karma for the awakened is swift because there is no buffer of ignorance to protect you. You are acting with premeditation. You are using the tools of the spirit to feed the desires of the ego. We must understand that free will is not just a right. It is the fundamental engine of spiritual evolution. Every soul must make its own mistakes. Every psyche must confront its own dragons. When you step in to slay the dragon for someone else, you deprive them of the victory. You steal their growth. You steal their hero's journey. And here lies the darkness of the violation. By trying to be the light in their life, you cast a shadow that blinds them. Consider the weaver. We are all weaving our tapestry of life. The threads are our choices. When you try to reach into someone else's loom and rethread their design because you do want like the pattern they are making, you tangle the threads. And under the law of cause and effect, that tangle becomes your tangle. If you manipulate someone to stay with you, or to leave a job, or to follow a belief system, you bind your karma to theirs. Their subsequent pain becomes your debt. Their confusion becomes your fog. You are no longer free because you have chained yourself to the result of a life that is not yours to live. The dark law is a warning. Do not play God. But, if we cannot intervene, if we cannot fix, if we cannot force, what are we to do with this light we have found? Are we to stand by idly while others suffer? Are we to be indifferent? No, indifference is the opposite of love. The answer lies in a profound shift of perspective, moving from the role of the puppeteer to the role of the lighthouse. But to understand this transition, and to learn how to wield your consciousness without burning those around you, we must go deeper into the mechanics of energy and projection. We need to explore how the shadow disguises itself as altruism, and how you can identify if you are currently violating this law in your own relationships. Ask yourself this right now, before we continue. Is there someone in my life whom I am secretly trying to change? Is there a situation where I am forcing a specific outcome because I am afraid of what will happen if I let go? Hold that thought. The answer may determine the trajectory of your own spiritual fate. We return to the question that hangs in the air. Who are you trying to change? To answer this, and to understand why the violation of the dark law carries such a heavy price for the awakened, we must look at the nature of flow. Imagine a mighty river. This river represents the Tao, the flow of life, the individual destiny of a soul. It has its own current, its own speed, and its own destination, determined by the gravity of its karma and the geography of its spirit. Now, imagine you are standing on the bank. You decide that the river is flowing wrong. You decide it should flow to the left, because to the left lies a meadow that you think is beautiful. So, you start throwing rocks into the water. You build a dam. You try to divert the current with your bare hands. What happens? The water does not simply obey. The water builds up pressure. It pushes back against your obstruction. The more you block its natural path, the more violent the current becomes. Eventually, the dam breaks, and the flood destroys not just your artificial barrier, but the very meadow you were trying to irrigate. This is the mechanics of interfering with free will. When you try to manipulate someone's path, even with the noblest of intentions, you are creating an energetic blockage in the flow of the universe. You are not just fighting that person's ego, you are fighting the momentum of their soul's journey. And the universe, like the river, always wins. Let us bring this down to the concrete reality of our daily lives. The most common place where the awakened violate this law is in their closest relationships. Perhaps you have a partner who is not spiritual. They are caught in the matrix of materialism, or they are dealing with addiction, or they are simply content with a life that you perceive as limited. You, having tasted the vastness of the unconscious and the beauty of the spirit, feel a desperate need to wake them up. You start leaving books they didn't ask for on their nightstand. You offer unsolicited advice disguised as observations. You sigh with heavy disappointment when they engage in low-vibration activities. You may even meditate with the specific intention of sending them light to change their behavior. Be very careful here. This is where the dark law is triggered. When you send energy to someone with a specific agenda, I want him to stop drinking. I want her to be more conscious. I want them to see the truth. You are not loving them. You are colonizing them. You are treating their soul as territory to be conquered and reshaped in your image. In depth psychology, we call this the Procrustean bed. Procrusteus was a mythical smith who invited travelers to sleep in his iron bed. If they were too short, he stretched them on a rack until they fit. If they were too tall, he amputated their legs. How often do we do this to the people we love? We stretch them or cut them to fit our idea of what an awakened relationship should look like. The karmic consequence of this violation is immediate and twofold. First, you create resistance. In psychology, it is a known fact that every pressure creates an equal and opposite counterpressure. By pushing someone to wake up, you force them to sleep deeper. By pushing them to change, you force them to dig in their heels to preserve their autonomy. You become the antagonist in their story, not the guide. You become the reason they reject spirituality, because they associate it with control, not freedom. Second, and more dangerously for you, you create depletion. Think about the physics of energy. When you take responsibility for someone else's evolution, you are effectively trying to power two lives with one generator. You are carrying their karma on your back. This is why so many healers, empaths, and spiritual seekers are perpetually exhausted, prone to autoimmune issues, or suffering from anxiety. You are hemorrhaging energy because you have breached the hull of your own vessel to try and tow another ship that has dropped its anchor. The dark law dictates that you cannot learn someone else's lesson for them. If you try to take away their pain, you take away their catalyst for growth. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes, that anything includes focusing obsessively on the souls of others. Here lies the uncomfortable truth of the shadow. We must ask ourselves, why does their sleeping state bother me so much? If you were truly secure in your own awakening, if you were truly grounded in your own self, the behavior of others would be observed with compassion, not irritation. The fact that you feel a need to change them indicates that you are projecting your own unlived life onto them. Perhaps you are trying to fix in them what you cannot fix in yourself. Perhaps their low vibration threatens you because your own high vibration is fragile and dependent on external validation. This is the boomerang effect of the dark law. The energy you throw out in manipulation returns to you as frustration and inner chaos. You lose your center because you have placed your center outside of yourself, in the behavior of another. So, does this mean we abandon those we love? Does this mean we watch them fall? No. There is a third way. The violation is not in the desire to help. The violation is in the method of interference. The difference lies between imposition and emanation. Imposition is active. It invades. Emanation is passive. It attracts. Think of the sun. The sun does not knock on your window and demand that you wake up. The sun does not shake you by the shoulders. The sun simply shines. It is fully itself. It burns with such intensity and consistency that eventually, the dawn breaks, the light enters the room, and you wake up naturally because the environment has changed. The sun respects the cycle of the night. It knows that the night is necessary. The awakened must learn to be like the sun, not like the wind. But how do we practice this in a world that is screaming for help? How do we distinguish between a helping hand and a controlling hand? The key lies in the concept of invitation. A true guide never enters a house unless invited. A true healer never touches a wound unless permission is granted. In the final part of this journey, we will explore the practical tools to realign yourself with the law. We will discuss how to withdraw your projections, how to call back your energy, and how to become a catalyst, someone who creates change not by force but by resonance. We will learn how to hold space without holding on. The path of the awakened is not to change the world by force, but to change the self so profoundly that the world transforms around you. Ask yourself now, am I brave enough to let go of the outcome? Am I brave enough to trust that the universe has a plan for them, even if that plan looks like a disaster to me? We arrive at the final shore of our understanding. We have explored the danger of playing God and the karmic backlash of interfering with the sacred flow of another's destiny. Now, we must learn how to live with this knowledge. If we cannot force change, how do we fulfill our purpose as awakened beings? The answer lies in the image of the lighthouse. Consider the function of a lighthouse. It does not run into the stormy sea to grab the ships by the hull and drag them to shore. If the lighthouse keeper were to leave his post and swim out into the waves to save a ship personally, two tragedies would occur. The keeper would drown, and the light would go out, dooming all the other ships navigating the darkness. The lighthouse is powerful precisely because it stays in its place. It is immobile. It is grounded. Its only job is to shine. It offers a reference point. The captain of the ship, the other soul, must choose to look at the light. They must choose to steer the wheel. They retain their sovereignty. This is the model for the awakened. To honor the dark law, you must stop trying to be the captain of everyone else's ship and commit to being the light on the rock. But how do we translate this metaphor into the gritty reality of daily life? How do we practice non-interference when everything in us screams to act? Here is the practical path of redemption and alignment. Step 1. The practice of the golden silence. The next time you are with someone who is complaining about their life, repeating the same mistakes, or expressing a view you know is limited, catch the impulse to correct them. Catch the fixer in your mind that wants to say, you should really read Jung, or you are projecting your father issues. Instead, practice the golden silence. This is not an indifferent silence. It is an active, resonant container. You listen, you witness. By not reacting, by not judging, and by not trying to fix, you create a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. When you don't fill the space with your advice, the other person is forced to hear the echo of their own voice. Often, in that silence, they will suddenly say, listening to myself say this, it sounds ridiculous. I think I need to change. They arrive at the realization themselves, and because it came from inside them, it is a permanent seed of transformation, not a temporary sticker you pasted on their forehead. You have allowed their free will to operate. You have accrued no negative karma. In fact, you have generated positive karma by offering the gift of holding space. Step 2. The law of invitation. There is a cosmic rule of etiquette. Wisdom must be invited to be received. If you force wisdom upon the unready, it is perceived as poison. Therefore, you must wait for the invitation. How do you know when you are invited? They will ask. They will say, what do you think? Or how did you deal with this? Until that question is asked, your only job is to embody your truth, not to preach it. Live your life with such integrity, such joy, and such clarity that they become curious. Be the example. If you are healthy, calm and radiant, they will eventually ask, what is your secret? That question is the door opening. That is the green light from the universe. Now you can speak, but speak only as much as they can carry. Do not dump the entire ocean into a teacup. Give them one drop. If they ask for more, give them to. This respects their capacity and their pace. Step 3. Karmic redemption and release. Perhaps, as you watch this, you feel a heavy weight in your chest. You realize you have violated this law. You have manipulated. You have tried to control your children, your partner, or your friends. You feel the karmic backlash, the strained relationships, the exhaustion, the resentment. Is there a way back? Absolutely. Karma is not a life sentence. It is a school. The universe is not interested in your suffering. It is interested in your learning. The moment you truly understand the lesson, the karma is often resolved. To clear this debt, you must perform an internal act of release. Close your eyes. Visualize the person you have been trying to control. See them standing before you. In your mind's eye, bow to them. This bow is an acknowledgement of their divinity and their sovereignty. Say to them, internally, I apologize for not trusting your soul's journey. I release you. I give you back your destiny. I trust that you have the strength to learn your lessons, just as I am learning mine. I am no longer your savior. I am your witness. Feel the cords of control snapping. Feel the energy returning to you. This is not abandonment. This is the highest form of respect. You are telling the universe, I trust your plan for them more than my plan for them. This act of surrender often produces miracles. Paradoxically, when we stop pushing people to change, they often begin to change. Why? Because the pressure is gone. They have space to move. And even if they do not change, you have liberated yourself from the trap. You have stopped the leakage of your own power. Conclusion: the path of the awakened is a path of paradox. We gain power only to discover we must not use it over others. We see the truth only to realize we cannot force the blind to see. The dark law is there to protect us from the arrogance of the ego. It reminds us that every soul is an entire universe, with its own gravity, its own history, and its own sacred timing. Your responsibility is immense, but it is focused. It is the responsibility to tend to your own flame, to clean your own mirror so that it reflects the light clearly, to be a sanctuary of peace in a chaotic world. When you violate the law, you bring the storm upon yourself. When you respect the law, you become the lighthouse. And in a world of shipwrecks, we do not need more captains fighting for the wheel. We need more light. Now the choice is yours. Will you continue to struggle with the currents of others, or will you climb the tower and stand firm in your own light? If this message resonated with your spirit, if it touched a truth you have always known but feared to admit, subscribe to this channel. We are building a community of souls brave enough to face the shadow and integrate the light. Leave a comment below. Tell us about a time when you stopped trying to fix someone and what happened afterwards. Your story might be the exact lighthouse another viewer needs to see today. Share this video with a friend who carries the weight of the world on their shoulders. Give them permission to set it down. Until next time, keep your light steady.